A cold silence settles over Earth as alien forces shut down its satellites, triggering an atmosphere of panic and disbelief. The human response? A counterattack from below, a threat no one saw coming. The first steps toward humanity's revenge are taken, though no one knows yet how deep the ground runs. The aliens made a grave mistake, and it begins with a crack beneath their feet. The alien fleet hovered in the black expanse, an unblinking eye of destruction, floating over a world they had deemed insignificant. Earth. The planet had been silent. For decades, dismissed, ignored, reduced to nothing more than a memory. They thought humanity was long dead. Their satellites had shut down. Communication was severed. There was no more signal. There was no more warning. The council laughed. One of their high-ranking officers, a drake-like alien with scales that gleamed like polished chrome, pressed a long claw against the console in front of him. His eyes twinkled with cold amusement. "Earth has done nothing but sleep," he said, his voice thick with mockery, "and it shall continue to sleep." The rest of the council murmured in agreement. They all agreed. Humanity, if they ever were a threat, had been crushed under time. The human race was too primitive. They lacked the power to even retaliate now, but no one saw it coming. The planet's surface had begun to tremble. The sound was barely a whisper at first, a slight rumble that echoed beneath the surface, barely perceptible to anyone who might be listening. But the tremor spread fast. The ground shifted, deep in the planet's crust. Beneath the alien vessels, the Earth shifted in a way they couldn't understand. And then it happened. The ground split open. One alien officer, his eyes still gleaming with superiority, turned to the others. "The humans have no weapons left. We destroyed them all," he said, but his voice faltered when he felt the tremors grow louder. This cannot be. But it was happening. Below, in Earth's deepest layers, something ancient stirred. Long-hidden technologies, forgotten weapons, dormant for centuries, began to awaken. They were far more advanced than any of the Council members had ever believed. Humans, in their apparent silence, had not been waiting for the right moment to strike. They had been preparing, adapting, evolving in ways no one had anticipated. The satellites had gone dark, and with them, Earth's visible presence vanished from the stars. But under the surface, in the forgotten depths, something much more dangerous had been lying in wait. It was now being unleashed. The alien council held their breath. This wasn't just the last dying gasp of an inferior species. This was something different, something new, something far more frightening. In the distance, the human response was unfolding. The ground cracked wide open, revealing underground structures that stretched for miles. Advanced machinery rumbled to life, its pulse reverberating across the alien fleet. The Earth's defenses had awoken. Humanity's silent war had only just begun. But what was it? What was this new weapon? None of the aliens knew. They watched in horror as one of the massive machines breached the surface. A dark silhouette against the sky, dwarfing everything around it. A strange sense of unease filled the alien council. What had they missed? What had they overlooked? The tremors stopped suddenly. The entire fleet fell eerily silent. Then from the depths, something larger and far more terrifying began to rise. The alien fleet watched helplessly as the towering structure, like a leviathan born of Earth's very core, emerged from the ground. Its surface was covered in symbols the Council could not even recognize, and at its heart there was power. "Activate! Shields!" one of the alien officers barked, his voice tinged with fear, but it was too late. The leviathan shifted, casting a shadow over the alien vessels. The cold metal of the Council's ships suddenly seemed small, insignificant. A single thought rippled through their minds. What had Earth been hiding? It wasn't mercy they had found in the silence of Earth. It was a sleeping giant. And that was before Earth even responded. The alien fleet was on high alert, their once smug confidence now replaced by a creeping unease. The Leviathan from Earth's depths stood tall above them, its shadow swallowing the horizon. The eerie silence that followed the massive awakening weighed heavy, every crew member, every officer, unable to look away from the colossal monument of Earth's defiance. But they weren't ready for what came next. The first wave of energy pulsed outward, not from the ground itself, but from the Leviathan's core. A beam of light, sharp, intense, cut through the blackness of space, slicing through the closest alien ship like butter. There was no warning, no chance for the fleet to react. The beam simply hit, and in an instant, a mighty vessel was gone, reduced to space dust, disintegrated by the force of Earth's forgotten power. Panic spread like wildfire across the fleet. "Reinforce shields," one of the commanders shouted, his voice breaking under the pressure. But it was already too late. The beam had ripped through their most formidable ship like paper, and now the rest of them were mere sitting ducks. The unimaginable was happening. They were being attacked, not by some advanced military force, but by the forgotten remnants of a species they had long underestimated. Back on Earth, those responsible for awakening this power didn't pause to watch the destruction unfold. They were in motion, their eyes focused on something far deeper than just the chaos in the stars. Humanity had been preparing for this moment for years. They had rebuilt, restructured, and most importantly, they had learned. Every generation, every leader, every scientist, each had contributed to a grand scheme that until now had remained hidden beneath their feet. The pulse from the Leviathan had done more than destroy. It had activated a network of machines buried deep beneath the Earth's surface, connected by ancient technologies humanity had long forgotten. They had known that the day would come when Earth would be tested, when the galaxy would look upon them with contempt, and they had prepared for that day. But no one, not even the human masterminds, could have predicted what had been set in motion. As the second wave of attacks began, the aliens scrambled, each fleet member in panic, realizing they had made a grave mistake. The once confident commander of the fleet, who had mocked Earth's primitive technology only moments ago, now sat frozen, staring at the massive wave of destruction closing in on them. His fleet, his crew, his very empire was crumbling. "We need to pull back," he ordered, but the command came too late. The machines beneath the Earth had linked, and now the Leviathan wasn't alone. More and more weapons were coming online, rising from the ground, their massive forms shaking the planet's surface. There was no way to stop it. There was no way to control it. The Galactic Empire, so used to being in control, was now at the mercy of Earth's wrath. As the fleet's panic spread, a horrifying realization set in. Earth was not defenseless. Earth was not weak. Earth had been waiting, and now, as the final waves of human power surged toward the alien fleet, the fear in the alien council's eyes became impossible to hide. The human message was clear. Earth would not be silenced. Earth would not be ignored. And as the alien ships turned to flee, the ground beneath them cracked again. The last of the alien vessels would be left with one final thought before they vanished into the distance. Earth was no longer the planet they had laughed at. Earth was no longer their prey. The planet had risen, and it had made its intentions clear. They thought it was mercy. It wasn't. The alien fleet's retreat was swift, but it was clear that panic was slowly suffocating their every move. Ships that had once glided through the stars with an air of unshakable confidence now veered off course, scattering into space in chaotic disarray. They had underestimated Earth, and now they were running from the consequences. Back on the surface, deep within Earth's hidden vaults, the machinery continued to hum, its power rising steadily. The enormous ancient structures were now fully operational. Every machine, every network, every dormant system was awake, ready to wage the war humanity had always been prepared for. This was no ordinary retaliation. This was something much more primal, something more terrifying. The ground quaked again, a violent tremor that rumbled all the way to the sky as more Leviathan-like machines began to ascend from the Earth's crust. Towering structures of metal and stone, each one more imposing than the last, stood erect against the backdrop of a darkening sky. The Earth had birthed these creatures, silent, waiting, calculating, and now they were marching into space. But even as they moved, the human commanders remained focused on something more important. They had learned to control their power, not in the blinding rush of battle, but in the steady, deliberate rise of their forces. The Earth was shaking, but it was a calculated tremor. Humanity was not about to take revenge in a fit of rage. No, they had been patient, far more patient than the alien empire ever imagined. The alien fleet continued to scatter, unable to regroup. Communications were lost. Their once thriving networks of ships had been fractured by the shockwave of humanity's retaliation. For the first time in centuries, the Empire had no idea how to respond. They had nothing left to counter with. Their best ships, their finest commanders, destroyed by one unexpected move. Earth's forgotten weapons, older than any empire, now wreaked havoc across the stars. In the heart of the fleet, the commander who had once dismissed Earth's defenses stood in silence, his thoughts swirling in disbelief. He had been so sure, so confident that Earth would fall without a fight. But now, as he watched ship after ship fall to Earth's ancient technologies, a feeling of dread spread through him. "Sir," a junior officer called, her voice filled with fear. "We're losing communications. We can't reach any of the outlying ships." He turned slowly, eyes wide, mouth dry. This was beyond anything he had prepared for. "Get me a report from the Central Command," he ordered, his voice steady, but filled with underlying panic. Now, but the message that came back was even worse than he had feared. The Central Command was gone, vanished, consumed by the rising forces of Earth's retaliatory power. The ships they had sent ahead to scout had been obliterated in seconds, wiped from existence without a trace. "What do we do now?" The officer's voice trembled, the fear in her eyes undeniable. She had never seen anything like this before. This wasn't just an attack. This was an execution, a massacre. The commander's hands shook as he gripped the console in front of him. There was nothing left, no allies, no escape. The fleet was falling apart, and Earth's power seemed infinite. He had been wrong, so horribly wrong. He thought they had crushed Earth once and for all. But instead, they had only awakened something far worse than they could ever imagine. "Activate the last line of defense," he said through gritted teeth, trying to regain control of his panic. "Set course for the nearest space station. We can regroup there." But as the order was given, something else happened. A new energy signal pulsed from Earth's surface, a burst of power that turned every alien ship's systems on their head. They were no longer in control. Earth had control. The alien ships began to lose power, their systems failing one by one. Weapons that had once been the deadliest in the galaxy were now useless. Shields that had been impenetrable faltered. The very systems they had relied on for centuries were crumbling. The fear that had already begun to suffocate the alien fleet grew to unbearable levels. Their greatest strength, their technology, was being dismantled by a force they could neither understand nor stop. The silence from Earth was over. The planet's retaliation had been slow, methodical, and now it was suffocating. The calm before the storm had passed, and Earth was the storm. On the surface of the planet, humanity's resolve remained firm. Earth was not simply fighting for survival. Earth was rewriting the rules. Every move, every strike was a statement. Earth had been underestimated, and now the galaxy would feel its wrath. The alien commander realized too late that he had been right about one thing. Earth had been silent, but silence did not equal weakness. It was their power, it was their strength, and now they were unleashing it all. The ground rumbled once more, and the sky seemed to crack open as Earth's final defense mechanism, a massive interstellar cannon, powered up. The alien fleet was trapped. No matter where they fled, no matter how fast they ran, Earth would not stop. And they would never forget this lesson. Humanity was no longer a silent player in the universe. They had become the storm. Every empire falls. This one just took longer to notice. The alien fleet was in full retreat now, its broken ships scrambling in all directions. Some tried to head deeper into space, hoping the vast expanse of the cosmos could offer them refuge. Others made an attempt to signal their home planets, but Earth had already cut off every possible escape. Their communications were all but severed, blocked by the relentless onslaught from beneath the surface. No one had expected this. A species they thought was dead had risen, not with anger, but with precision, intelligence, and an unimaginable depth of preparation. And now the alien empire was paying the price for their underestimation. Commander Zaril had never felt more powerless. His once proud fleet, the strongest in the galaxy, was now scattered, broken, and desperate. The sleek, deadly ships he had commanded were now barely holding together. As he sat in the captain's chair, watching the chaos unfold, he couldn't shake the image of Earth's machines, monstrous, ancient creatures that had emerged from the depths of the planet like gods returning to reclaim their throne. It wasn't just their strength that terrified him. It was the fact that humanity had kept it all hidden. For centuries, the galaxy had believed Earth was a primitive world, vulnerable and weak, isolated from the greater universe. And the alien empire had exploited that belief to crush any resistance the planet had ever mustered. But Earth was no longer isolated, and the galaxy would never forget the power of a species it had so carelessly dismissed. Zaril's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of alarms blaring across the bridge. One of the remaining ships had been hit again. The alien fleet was losing more than just ships, it was losing hope. "Sir," a panicked officer called, "another of the deep strike machines is coming up from the surface. It's bigger than anything we've seen before." Zaril's heart sank. He'd already lost too many ships to the smaller weapons, but a new wave, one stronger than anything he could imagine, was emerging. He had no idea what it could do, but he could already feel the weight of their impending doom. "Can we outrun it?" Zaril asked, his voice barely a whisper. The officer shook his head. "No, sir. It's closing in too fast. The gravitational pull from the planet's surface is too strong. We're stuck in its orbit." Zaril's mind raced. Escape was impossible. The fleet had no way of fighting back. Their weapons were useless. The planet's surface was crawling with machines that moved faster than any ship could travel. Earth was closing in on them, not just from beneath, but from every direction. He turned to face the main viewport, staring out at the planet's surface, the leviathan that had started it all still rising, its massive form eclipsing the sky. The sight was beyond anything he could comprehend. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a statement. Humanity was reclaiming its place in the stars. From the depths of the planet, the final piece of Earth's response was now fully activated, a massive orbital cannon capable of erasing entire fleets in one blast. It glowed with a dark energy, its core pulsing with the force of an ancient power that no alien race had ever seen. Zaril had heard whispers of this weapon, but he never imagined it would be activated against him, not with the ferocity and fidelity it now displayed. The officer at his side nervously ran his fingers across the console. "Sir, it's locking onto our coordinates." Zaril looked out the window once more, seeing the final wave of destruction coming. It was inevitable. The humans had always known their enemy's arrogance would be their downfall. But humanity's patience had been the weapon they had wielded all along. The orbital cannon fired. The blast lit up the entire system, sending shockwaves through space. The alien ships closest to Earth were torn apart in an instant. The shockwave caused a ripple effect that sent the remaining vessels flying off course, tumbling like debris in the wake of the blast. The once proud fleet, the terror of the galaxy, had been reduced to little more than fragments scattered across space. Sharil's hands gripped the armrests of his chair, his heart pounding in his chest. For a moment, he felt nothing but the weight of his failure. They had lost. They had been outmatched, outwitted, and destroyed by a species they had so long ignored. But even in the face of annihilation, he couldn't help but feel a grudging respect. Humanity had been silent, yes, but they had been preparing, evolving, and waiting for the moment when the galaxy would think it was safe to push them around. And now, the galaxy would learn what it meant to be wrong. As Zaril's ship spun into a chaotic orbit, the last remnants of his crew scrambled to stay afloat, trying desperately to re-establish control. But it was too late. The damage had been done. The final blow had been struck. On Earth, the ground stopped shaking. The machines that had risen from the depths of the planet slowly began to lower themselves back into the ground, their purpose fulfilled. The skies cleared, and the remnants of the alien fleet were left to drift in space, a stark reminder of the price of underestimating Earth. The planet, once dismissed as a backwater world, had proven itself to be far more than that. Humanity had not only survived, it had fought back with a vengeance that would be felt across the stars, and as the dust settled, one thing was clear. Earth had awakened, and it would not go back to sleep. The stars were silent, but the message was deafening. Never underestimate humanity.